"in order to vomit and purge their sinful bodies." That the people outside the square might also be purified, one of the old men laid down a quantity of green tobacco at a corner of the square. This was carried off by an old woman, who distributed to the people without, who chewed and swallowed it, "in order to afflict their souls." During this general fast, the women, children, and men of weak constitution were allowed to eat after midday, but not before. On the morning when the fast ended, the women brought a quantity of the old year's food to be outside of the sacred square. These provisions were then fetched in and set before the famished multitude, but all traces of them had to be removed before noon. When the sun was declining from the meridian, all the people were commanded by the voice of a crier to stay within doors, to do no bad act, and to be sure to extinguish and throw away every spark of the old fire. Universal silence now reigned. Then the high priest made the new fire by the friction of two pieces of wood, and placed it on the altar under the green arbour. This new fire was believed to atone for all past crimes except murder. Next a basket of new fruits was brought. The high priest took a little of each sort of fruit, rubbed it with bear's oil, and offered it, together with some flesh, "to the bountiful Holy Spirit of fire, as a first fruit offering, and an annual oblation for sin." He also consecrated the sacred emetics, the button snake root and the cassina or black drink, by pouring a little of them into the fire. The persons who had remained outside now approached, without entering, the sacred square, and the chief priest thereupon made a speech, exhorting the people to observe their old rites and customs, announcing that the new divine fire had purged away the sins of the past year, and earnestly warning the women that, if any of them had not extinguished the old fire, or had contracted any impurity, they must forthwith depart, "lest the divine fire should spoil both them and the people." Some of the new fire was then set down outside the holy square. The women carried it home joyfully and laid it on their unpolluted hearths. When several towns had united to celebrate the festival, the new fire might thus be carried for several miles. The new fruits were then dressed on the new fires and eaten with bear's oil, which was deemed indispensable. At one point of the festival the men rubbed the new corn between their hands, then on their faces and breasts. During the festival which followed, the warriors, dressed in their wild martial array, their heads covered with white down and carrying white feathers in their hands, danced round the sacred arbour, under which burned the new fire. The ceremonies lasted 8 days, during which the strictest continence was practised. Towards the conclusion of the festival, the warriors fought a mock battle. Then the men and women together, in 3 circles, danced round the sacred fire. Lastly, all the people smeared themselves with white clay and bathed in running water. They came out of the water believing that no evil could now befall them for what they had done amiss in the past. So they departed in joy and peace. To this day also the remnant of the Seminole Indians of Florida, a people of the same stock as the Creeks, hold an annual purification and festival called the Green Corn Dance, at which the new corn is eaten. On the evening of the first day of the festival they quaff a nauseous black drink, as it is called, which acts both as an enemic and a purgative. They believe that he who does not drink of this liquor cannot safely eat the new green corn, and besides that he will be sick at some time in the year. While the liquor is being drunk, the dancing begins, and the medicine men join in. Next day they eat of the green corn. The following day they fast, probably from fear of polluting the sacred food in their stomachs by contact with common food. But the third day they hold a great feast. Even tribes which do not till the ground sometimes observe analogous ceremonies when they gather the first wild fruits or dig the first roots of the season. Thus, among the Salish and the Tina Indians of northwest America, before the young people eat the berries or roots of the season, they always addressed the fruit or plant, and begged for its favour and aid. In some tribes, Regular first fruit ceremonies were annually held at the time of picking the wild fruit or gathering the roots, and also among the salmon-eating tribes when the run of the sockeye salmon began. These ceremonies were not so much thanksgivings as performances to ensure a plentiful crop or supply of the particular object desired. For if they were not properly and reverently carried out, there was danger of giving offence to the spirits of the objects, of being deprived of them. For example, these Indians are fond of the young shoots or suckers of the wild raspberry, and they observe a solemn ceremony of eating the first of them in season. The shoots are cooked in a new pot. The people assemble and stand in a great circle with closed eyes, while the presiding chief or medicine man invokes the spirit of the plant, begging that it will be propitious to them and grant them a good supply of suckers. After this part of the ceremony is over, the cooked suckers are handed to the presiding officer in a newly carved dish, and a small portion is given to each person present, who reverently and decorously eats it. The Thompson Indians of British Columbia cook and eat the sunflower root Balsamorrhiza sagittata, but they used to regard it as a mysterious being, and observed a number of taboos in connection with it. For example, women who were engaged in digging or cooking the root must practice continence, and no man might come near the oven while the women were baking the root. When young men ate the first berries, roots, or other products of the season, they addressed a prayer to the sunflower root as follows: I inform thee that I intend to eat thee. Mayest thou always help me to ascend, so that I may always be able to reach the tops of the mountains, and may I never be clumsy. I ask this from thee, sunflower root. Thou art the greatest of all in mystery. To omit this prayer would make the eater lazy and cause him to sleep long in the morning. These customs of the Thompson and other Indian tribes of the Northwest America are instructive, because they clearly indicate the motive, or at least one of the motives, which underlies the ceremonies observed in eating the first fruits of the season. That motive, in the case of these Indians, is simply a belief that the plant itself is animated by a conscious and more or less powerful spirit, who must be propitiated before the people can safely partake of the fruits or roots which are supposed to be part of his body. Now, if this is true of wild fruits and roots, we may infer with some probability that it is also true of cultivated fruits and roots, such as yams, and in particular that it holds good of the cereals, such as wheat, barley, oats, rice, and maize. In all cases, it seems reasonable to infer that the scruples which savages manifest at eating the first fruits of any crop, and the ceremonies which they observe before they overcome their scruples, are due, at least in large measure, to a notion that the plant or tree is animated by a spirit or even a deity, whose leave must be obtained, or whose favour must be sought, before it is possible to partake with safety of the new crop. This, indeed, is plainly affirmed of the Aino. They call the millet the divine cereal, the cereal deity, and they pray to and worship him before they will eat of the cakes made from the new millet. And even where the indwelling divinity of the new fruits is not expressly affirmed, it appears to be implied both by the solemn preparations made for eating them and by the danger supposed to be incurred by persons who venture to partake of them without observing the prescribed ritual. In all such cases, accordingly, we may not improperly describe the eating of the new fruits as a sacrament or communion with a deity, or at all events with a powerful spirit. Among the usages which point to this conclusion are the custom of employing either new or specially reserved vessels to hold the new fruits, and the practice of purifying the persons of the communicants before it is lawful to engage in the solemn act of communion with the divinity. Of all the modes of purification adopted on these occasions, none perhaps brings out the sacramental virtue of the rite so clearly as the Greek and Seminole practice of taking a purgative before swallowing the new corn. The intention is